This text is a modern rendition of Germania, a historical and ethnographic work by the esteemed Roman historian and politician Publius Cornelius Tacitus, who lived from around AD 56 to 120. Despite being lauded as one of the greatest Roman historians, Tacitus never actually travelled to Germania. His account was pieced together from second-hand sources. Written around 98 AD, Germania offers a snapshot of various Germanic tribes' cultures and customs, some 700 years before the Viking Age. From this, we glean insight into early tribal diversity, societal norms, warfare techniques, religious practices, and more. While Tacitus provides these vivid descriptions, it's important to note that his accounts reflect the Roman standards of civilization. When comparing this narrative to Norse culture, we see possible early traces of practices that would become integral to the Vikings. For example, the Suionis tribe's prowess in shipbuilding could be a precursor to the Vikings' famous seafaring capabilities. However, these Germanic tribes and Norse cultures were distinct entities, shaped by historical contexts. Interestingly, Tacitus's work was likely influenced by various sources, including Pliny the Elder's now lost Bella Germaniae, Caesar's Gallic Wars, and accounts from traders, soldiers, and Germanic mercenaries. As such, while Germania provides intriguing historical insights, it should be viewed as an amalgamation of different perspectives rather than a first-hand ethnographic study. Tacitus's Germania. Germany's varied tribes are boxed in. The Rhine River keeps them from the Gauls, the Danube blocks off the Rhaetians and Pannonians, while mountains, or just plain fear, discourage the Sarmatians and Dacians from dropping by. The icy waters of the North Sea wrap around Germany's northern frontier, highlighting sprawling peninsulas and gigantic islands where recent expeditions have turned up a few unknown nations and their leaders. The Rhine starts its journey in the steep, far-flung Rhaetian Alps before hooking slightly west to spill into the North Sea. Meanwhile, the Danube springs from the modest slopes of the Black Forest, and after meandering past more folks than the Rhine, pours into the Black Sea through 6 waterways, with a 7th getting lost in the marshlands. As for the Germans themselves, I'm pretty sure they've always been there, with very few outsiders seeping in through invasions or friendly cross-border exchanges. Back in the day, newcomers would sail in rather than trek overland, but the formidable ocean surrounding Germany's shores, practically daring outsiders to intrude, doesn't see a lot of our ships. Besides, who'd willingly trade Asia Minor, North Africa, or Italy for Germany, with its challenging landscapes and harsh weather, a land that's thankless to farm and depressing to look at unless you were born and bred there? In their old-school folk songs, which double as their history books, Germans venerate an earthborn god, Twisto. His son Manus is touted as the genesis of their race, and is said to have fathered 3 sons whose namesakes represent 3 tribe clusters, the Ingavones by the sea, the Herminones inland, and the Istevones covering everyone else. Some historians, taking full advantage of the guesswork permitted by ancient history, claim that Twisto fathered more tribes and throw in names like Marsi, Gambrivii, Suebi, and Vandili, insisting these are both authentic and ancient. But the tag Germania is supposedly a recent addition to the land. The first folks who dared to cross the Rhine and grab Gallic land are known today as Tungri, but they were originally called German. That label, initially belonging to a single tribe, slowly became a blanket term for the entire race. The conquerors of the Gauls were the first to brandish the term as a scare tactic. Later on, all Germans warmed up to it and have since embraced the label. It's said that even Hercules paid the Germans a visit back in the day. When they're getting psyched up for battle, they belt out songs praising him as the ultimate hero. Some folks even reckon that Ulysses, during his infamous globe-trotting escapades, managed to make it to the northern seas and check out the German lands, going so far as to establish and name Ascibergium, a Rhine town that's still kicking today. There's even a yarn about an altar dedicated to Ulysses, complete with an inscription of his dad Laertes' name, being unearthed there ages ago. And supposedly there are still some old mounds and monuments straddling the German-Rhaetian border, all inscribed with Greek letters. Now, whether you want to buy into these stories or not is up to you. I'm not here to sway you one way or the other. The Germans also have this well-known battle hymn they call the Baritus. This chant doesn't just fire them up, but also serves as a pre-battle prediction. The way the war cry resonates on the battlefield either sends chills down the enemy's spine or spooks the Germans themselves. They don't just consider it as a collective cheer, but as a symphony of bravery. They aim for a guttural, irregular bellow, using their shields as amplifiers to give it a more resounding, deeper tone. As for me, I subscribe to the idea that the Germans have always kept their bloodline pure, without any mixing with foreigners, making them unique and distinct from any other nation. A side effect of this is their consistently recognizable physical traits. Those intense blue eyes, fiery red hair, and towering bodies. That, mind you, can pack a punch, but only when they really push themselves. They're not the best at enduring hard labor or anything too strenuous, and they can't handle heat or thirst too well. But thanks to their homeland's weather, they're pretty good at dealing with the cold, and their not-so-fertile land has made them accustomed to hunger. Germany's landscape is a mixed bag, but mostly it's either thick with gnarly forests or bogged down by icky swamps. It tends to be more soggy on the side facing Gaul and breezier on the Noricum and Pannonia end. It's a decent place for growing grains, but don't even think about trying fruit trees. There's a fair bit of livestock, but don't expect any award-winning specimens. Even the cattle are a bit on the small side and missing that classic cow look. But the Germans love them anyway because they're basically the only kind of wealth they have. Whether it's a divine blessing or a cosmic joke, they're pretty much broke when it comes to gold and silver. But honestly, I can't say for sure that Germany's devoid of these precious metals since no one's gone digging for them. The locals aren't overly fond of gold and silver. You'll even find silverware gifted to leaders or diplomats being used like plain old pottery at their homes. But those living closest to us do value these metals for trading, and they've become pretty savvy at identifying certain types of our coins. They have a soft spot for old-school coins, especially those with grooved edges and two-horse chariot designs. And interestingly, they'd take silver over gold any day, not because they're silver fans, but because a stack of silver coins makes buying everyday items easier. Iron isn't exactly in abundance in Germany either. At least that's what their weaponry suggests. Swords and large lances are a rare sight. Instead, they favour spears, or framii in their lingo, with small, narrow blades that are razor-sharp and versatile for up-close or distance fighting. Their horse riders pack a shield and spear, but the foot soldiers also fling javelins, a bunch of them. These guys can chuck them a mile, despite being practically naked or just wearing light short cloaks. There's nothing flashy about their gear, only their shields get a personalised colour makeover. You'll see a breastplate, once in a blue moon, and the occasional helmet of metal or hide. Their horses are nothing to write home about, lacking in speed and beauty, and aren't exactly dressage material. They're ridden straight or with a slight right turn, but they do keep their formation tight, no stragglers here. In general, they're more about the foot power than horsepower. So you'll see foot soldiers keeping pace with the cavalry, thanks to their lightning-fast sprinting abilities. From all the young warriors, the best are selected and positioned with the cavalry at the front lines. Exactly 100 from each district are chosen, earning them the title the 100 back home. This number has become more of a badge of honor now. Their battle formations look like a bunch of wedges. Retreating isn't seen as cowardly as long as you circle back for an attack. They make a point to retrieve the bodies of their fallen comrades, even in the heat of battle. Tossing your shield is seen as the ultimate humiliation, and anyone who does this gets banned from any community events or ceremonies. There have been many who, after losing face on the battlefield, chose to end it all by hanging themselves to escape the shame. The Germans pick their kings based on noble birth and their leaders for their bravery. Kings don't rule with an iron fist. It's not that kind of scene. Leaders inspire more by setting the bar high with their relentless energy, courage, and by leading the charge in battle. The heavy stuff, like capital punishment, imprisonment, or even flogging, is left to the priests. And it's not just about punishment or following orders. They believe it's like serving the will of their battle god. In fact, they bring along certain figures and symbols from their holy groves right into the thick of the fight. One thing that really stokes their bravery is that their squads aren't randomly thrown together. Each unit consists of members from the same family or clan, and right there beside them are their nearest and dearest, so close that they can hear their women wailing and kids crying. These are the folks they respect the most and whose praise they crave. They go to their mothers and wives for wound tending, and the women are fearless in tallying up and comparing the battle scars. These women also bring food to the warriors, cheering them on all the while. There are records of wavering armies on the brink of defeat being rallied back into the fight by their women. These ladies get all heroic, baring their chests and reminding the men of the looming threat of enslavement, a fate the Germans dread more for their women than themselves. You can actually get a stronger grip on these tribes by demanding highborn girls as part of any hostage deal. But there's more. The Germans believe women have a sacred touch and a knack for prophecy, so they don't scoff at seeking their counsel or taking their advice lightly. Back in the day when Emperor Vespasian was in charge, many Germans revered a woman named Veleda as a sort of deity. Even before that, they held women like Orinia in similar high regard. And it wasn't just some sort of flattery or trying to make goddesses out of women. They genuinely respected them. Above all, the Germans are big fans of Mercury. They don't even bat an eye at including human sacrifices in his honor during certain festivals. But for Hercules and Mars, they're a little more mainstream and just offer up animal sacrifices. Some of the Suebi tribe also pay homage to Isis. Now, I'm not sure how this foreign deity snuck into their worship, but the goddess's emblem, designed like a lightweight battleship, kinda gives away that it's an imported faith. The Germans find it kind of tacky to encase gods within walls or sketch them to resemble human faces. They prefer their sacred places to be woods and groves and believe in an unseen divine presence that can only be perceived with reverential eyes. Now, when it comes to omens and casting lots, these folks take it seriously. Their procedure is pretty straightforward. They chop off a branch from a nut-bearing tree, slice it into strips, mark them with different signs, and randomly toss them onto a white cloth. Then the state priest, if it's a public consultation, or the family head, if it's private, prays to the gods and picks up 3 strips, interpreting their meaning from the signs etched on them. If the lots veto an endeavor, they shelf the matter for the day. If approved, they seek further confirmation through bird omen interpretation. Speaking of birds, while the Germans use the common method of observing bird cries and flight for omens, they've also got a unique horse-based omen reading practice. These sacred horses, kept in the woods and groves I mentioned, are pure white and haven't been subjected to any labor. They're hitched to a sacred chariot by the priest and the king or chieftain, who then interpret the horse's neighs and snorts for omens. No other form of divination holds more sway among the Germans, including the nobles and priests who believe they are mere servants of the gods, while the horses share their divine counsel. There's also another way they predict the outcomes of serious wars. They somehow capture a warrior from the enemy side, arm him with his native weapons, and pit him against one of their own champions. The victor of this one-on-one is believed to foreshadow the result of the war. In Germanic societies, minor matters are deliberated by the chiefs, while the whole community debates on major issues. However, the chiefs consider every subject in advance, even when the commons have the decision-making power. The community assembles on specific days, usually shortly after the new moon or before the full moon, believed to be the most propitious times for any undertaking. They track time not by days like us, but by nights, which they consider to usher in the day. Everything from their engagements to appointments is scheduled according to this system. One downside of their independent nature is their untimeliness. A summons isn't seen as a command, so they might take 2 or 3 days to gather for a meeting. Once the crowd settles, they sit fully armed. Priests, who have the power to enforce obedience during these gatherings, command silence. The king or the state chief is then given a hearing, with the weight given to his words dependent on his age, rank, military distinction, or eloquence. The people show their dissent to a proposal by shouting, while approval is expressed by clashing their spears, this weapon rattling being their preferred form of agreement. These assemblies also handle criminal charges, especially those with capital punishment at stake. The mode of execution varies with the crime. Traitors and deserters are hanged on trees, while cowards, shirkers, and sodomites are pushed under a wicker hurdle into a bog's slimy mud. The belief is that state offenders should be made public examples, while shameful deeds should be hidden from sight. Lesser offences have penalties too, usually fines in the form of horses or cattle. Part of this fine goes to the king or state, and part to the victim or their relatives. In these same assemblies they elect officials, including the magistrates who administer justice in districts and villages. Each magistrate is aided by 100 assessors, chosen from the people, who both advise him and lend authority to his decisions. In Germanic societies, individuals are always armed when conducting any public or private business. However, there's a rule that no one can carry weapons until the state authorities verify their competence in using them. Upon passing this test, either one of the chiefs, the young man's father, or another relative presents him with a shield and a spear in the presence of the assembly. This moment, akin to the toga ceremony in Roman culture, marks his public transition from being a member of a household to becoming a citizen. Boys can attain the rank of chief while still in their teens, due to particularly noble birth or their father's great services. These young chiefs are attached to stronger, more mature individuals who were approved years before, and they take pride in being part of a chief's retinue. Ranks within these retinues are determined by the chief, leading to a competitive spirit among the followers to earn the highest place in the chief's favor, as well as among the chiefs to have the most robust and valiant retinue. The size and quality of a chief's retinue not only bring prestige within his nation, but also earn him recognition in neighboring states, often influencing the outcome of wars. On the battlefield, it's considered disgraceful for a chief to be outdone in courage by his followers, and for followers not to match their chief's courage. Followers are obliged to defend their chief, letting him take credit for their heroic acts, and their ultimate goal is to fight for their chief, not victory. The chiefs fight for victory, the followers for their chief. Many noble youths, when their native land is experiencing prolonged peace, seek out other tribes engaged in war. They believe that renown is easier to win among dangers, and that a large body of retainers can be maintained only through war and violence. Their demands on their chief's generosity, their desire for a coveted war horse or a blood-stained spear from a defeated enemy, and their acceptance of plentiful, if homely, meals in lieu of pay, reflect this ethos. The resources for this generosity come from war and plunder. Germans are less inclined to patiently farm and wait for a harvest than to challenge a foe and risk wounds. Accumulating slowly through hard work is viewed as tame and spiritless when they can gain swiftly through the shedding of blood. In Germanic societies, when they're not engaged in warfare, individuals spend some time hunting, but most of their time in idleness, primarily sleeping and eating. The boldest and most warlike have no regular jobs, as domestic and agricultural tasks are left to the women, the elderly, and the weaker members of the family. This lifestyle seems inconsistent, as they simultaneously enjoy idleness but disdain peace. It's a common practice for chiefs to receive gifts of cattle or agricultural produce from citizens who make these voluntary contributions as tokens of respect and to cater to their chief's needs. Gifts from neighboring states, whether from individuals or communities, are particularly valued. These can include select horses, fine weapons, metal discs, and collars. Germans have also learned to appreciate monetary gifts. Notably, Germanic people never inhabit cities and avoid having their houses adjoin one another. Instead, they live scattered, settling wherever a spring, plain, or grove appeals to them. Their villages are not constructed like Roman settlements, with adjacent interconnected buildings. Every homeowner leaves an open space around his house, possibly as a safeguard against fires, or due to a lack of expertise in construction. They don't use stones or tiles for building. Instead, they use roughly cut timber, which appears unattractive and crude. However, they meticulously cover some parts with clay of such purity and brightness that it resembles painting or colored design. They also have the practice of digging underground caves, which they cover with large amounts of manure and use both as shelters from winter cold and as storage for their produce. These subterranean refuges mitigate the harshness of the frosts. In case of invasion, while the open land may be ravaged, these hidden excavations either remain unknown or escape detection because they are difficult to find without a thorough search. In Germany, the universal dress is a cloak, fastened with a brooch, or, if unavailable, a thorn. They can spend entire days by the fire wearing only this garment. To wear undergarments, especially ones that are form-fitting and trace every limb, is seen as a mark of considerable wealth. They also wear skins of wild animals. Those living near the river borders do so without much concern for aesthetics, while tribes living farther away show some refinement in their choice of skins. The latter carefully select animals and decorate the hides with patches of skin from creatures found in the far-off oceans. Women's clothing differs from men's in that women often wear linen outer garments with a purple pattern, and their upper garments are sleeveless, leaving their arms and parts of their chest near the shoulders exposed. The marriage code among the Germans is highly strict, and this aspect of their morality is especially commendable. They are among the few barbarian societies where each man is generally content with one wife. A few men, due to their high status, may take more than one wife, not out of desire, but due to the numerous matrimonial alliances offered to them. Interestingly, in their culture, the dowry is provided by the husband to the wife, not vice versa. The dowry isn't composed of fancy or decorative items for the wife, but practical things like oxen, a horse with its bridle, or a shield, spear, and sword. This exchange of gifts symbolizes their sacred bond of union, blessed through mystic rites under the presiding deities of marriage. Women in these societies are not considered exempt from manly virtues or the risks of warfare. Hence, through these wedding gifts, a woman is reminded that she enters her husband's home to share in his toils and perils, in both peace and war. This concept is symbolized through the gifts of the team of oxen, the ready-for-rider horse, and the arms. She is expected to live her life and raise her children based on these principles, keeping these gifts intact for her children, who will then pass them on to the next generation. German folks really value the virtue of their women. Public displays of lust or wild parties? Nope, not their thing. Even secret love letters are unheard of. Adultery? That's super rare, and if a wife is found guilty, the punishment is harsh. The husband shaves her head, strips her, and kicks her out of the house, even giving her a public flogging. A woman like that, no matter how pretty or rich, is unlikely to find another hubby. Germans don't see any humour in such behaviours, nor do they think cheating is cool or modern. In some parts, only virgins are allowed to marry, so a woman gives her all to her husband. She doesn't love him just for who he is, but because he represents the idea of marriage. They think killing or limiting the number of kids is wicked. Over there, they believe good manners and morals are better than any laws. Kids in Germany grow up tough, often going without clothes and getting dirty, which might explain why they're so sturdy. Moms nurse their own babies instead of handing them off to babysitters. Youngsters from all walks of life grow up together, hanging out with the same flock and living on the same floor until they grow up. Men and women take their sweet time to marry, making sure they're in their prime. This approach ensures that their kids inherit their robustness. Uncles regard their sisters' sons as highly as they do their own sons. In some tribes, this bond is even considered tighter than that between father and son. The main heirs and successors are a man's own kids, as there are no wills. If a man doesn't have kids, his brothers and then uncles are the next to inherit. Having many relatives and connections gives a man greater authority when he's old. Having no kids isn't considered cool in Germany. In terms of feuds and friendships, the heirs are expected to take over both from their dad or kin, but these feuds don't last forever and can even be settled, for crimes as serious as murder, by giving a fixed number of cattle or sheep as compensation. The entire family receives the compensation, which is good for the community because private feuds can be dicey in a society that cherishes freedom. The Germans love a good party. In fact, they consider it bad form to turn anyone away from their doorstep. The host lays out the best spread they can afford, and after the meal, guides the guest to the next house where they can get more food. They don't care if you showed up uninvited or if they don't know you. Everyone is treated equally when it comes to their hospitality. When it's time to leave, the guest can ask for anything they want as a parting gift. And it goes both ways. The host can also ask for a gift in return. They love giving and receiving presents, but they don't feel obligated to return a gift. Germans aren't early risers. After they wake up, often after sunrise, they take a bath, usually with warm water. Makes sense given their long winters. Then they sit down to eat, each at their own table and chair. After breakfast, they either go to work or, more likely, head off to a feast. They carry their weapons around all the time. They can drink for days, and it's not seen as a bad thing. Arguments do happen during these drinking sprees, and they can get violent. However, it's also during these feasts that they discuss important issues like resolving feuds, arranging marriages, choosing leaders, and even deciding on peace or war. They believe people are most honest when they've had a few drinks, and so everything that's been said is then reconsidered the next day when everyone's sober. This way, they get the best of both worlds. Their preferred drink is a kind of homemade beer made from barley or other grains that kind of taste like wine. Those living closer to the Rhine or the Danube also get to drink actual wine. As for food, they keep it simple: some wild fruits, fresh game, and curdled milk. No need for fancy cooking or appetizers, but when it comes to drinking, they aren't as disciplined. If you keep their cups filled, they'll drink until they drop. It's as if they're more likely to be defeated by their love for alcohol than by any enemy. The Germans have a pretty unique public entertainment. At every party, you'll see a bunch of naked young guys who've trained for this, dancing around swords and spears pointed at them. Skill and grace come from practice, but these guys aren't paid performers. The crowd's applause is their only reward. Something you wouldn't expect. They are serious about dice games and they play them sober. They bet big and can be so desperate to win that they'll even wager their freedom on a game. Losers become slaves willingly, allowing themselves to be sold no matter how young or strong they might be. They call it honor, but honestly, it's just a bad habit. These self-made slaves are then traded, as even their masters find the idea of winning someone's freedom somewhat disgraceful. Slaves in Germany don't have the same duties as slaves elsewhere. Each has their own place and responsibilities. The master just asks for a certain amount of grain, livestock, or cloth, kind of like a tenant. Anything else, like housework, is done by the housewife and her children. It's not common for slaves to be flogged or punished with hard work. Instead, they're more likely to be killed outright in a fit of rage, like an enemy. The crazy part? There's no consequence for the master. Freed slaves don't fare much better. They hardly have any influence, except in tribes ruled by kings, where they can hold a higher status than even free men and nobles. In general, though, the low status of freed slaves is seen as proof of real freedom. You won't see Germans investing money to earn interest. They just don't get it. And frankly, their ignorance is more effective than any law. They divide land among themselves based on their numbers and rank. Each year they change the lands they farm Despite having ample fertile land, they aren't making full use of it because they don't work hard enough. They don't bother planting orchards, fencing meadows, or irrigating gardens. They just want the land to yield crops. Their year is divided into 3 seasons: winter, spring, and summer. They don't know what autumn is, let alone the bounty it brings. When it comes to funerals, they keep it simple. The bodies of notable people are burned with specific types of wood. They don't throw clothes or spices into the pyre, just the deceased's weapons and maybe their horse. The grave is a mound of turf. They don't believe in grand stone monuments. Tears and grief are shown for a short while, but deep sorrow lingers. It's acceptable for a woman to express her sadness openly, while men are expected to keep their grief inside. Now, that was a general take on the origins and customs of the Germans, but each tribe within Germany has its own flavor, so let's dive into that. We'll also talk about those who packed their bags and moved from Germany to Gaul. Julius Caesar, the big shot himself, said that Gaul used to be more powerful than Germany. So it's likely that some Gauls relocated to Germany. After all, just a river separated them, hardly a big deal for a strong tribe looking to grab some new territory, especially when nobody owned it or there were no mega empires fighting over it. Between the Hercynian forest and the rivers Rhine and Main, we have the Helvetii, and beyond them the Boii, both Celtic tribes. We still call the place Bohemia, a nod to its history, though the residents have changed over time. Now, whether the Aravishi moved to Pannonia from the Ossi tribe or the Ossi moved to Germany from the Aravishi, we can't really say. They speak the same language, share customs and character. Makes sense when you consider how similar the living conditions were on both sides of the Danube back then. The Treviri and Nervii tribes are proud of their German roots. They think it's cool and doesn't make them look like the not-so-warlike Gauls. Right on the banks of the Rhine, you have the Vangiones, Triboci and Nemetes, who are definitely of German origin. The Ubi tribe, who have gotten comfy as a Roman colony and even took on the name Agrippinenses after Agrippina, aren't shy about their heritage. They moved across the river a while back and earned Rome's trust. So now they guard the West Bank not as prisoners, but as defenders against intruders. The bravest tribe in Gaul, the Batavi, don't hold much riverbank, but they do own an island in the Rhine. They were part of the Chatti tribe, but moved during a civil war and ended up being part of the Roman Empire. They still have some special privileges, like not having to pay tribute or deal with tax collectors. They're kept for battle, like weapons and armor ready for war. The Mattiaci tribe are under the same Roman control. Even though they are geographically on the German side, they're loyal to Rome. They're just like the Batavi, only their environment makes them even tougher. I wouldn't include the people living in the Agri decimates among the Germans. They settled between the Rhine and Danube. Basically, a bunch of deadbeats from Gaul and broke adventurers grabbed this unclaimed territory. They only became part of the Roman Empire later, when the defense line moved and the area was considered a province's corner. Next up are the Chatti. Their home begins from the Hercynian forest and is less open and swampy than the flat, sprawling territories of other German tribes. The landscape there is hillier, gradually leveling off as you move. The Hercynian forest kind of babies them all the way, guiding them right up to the plains. Now, the Chatti people, they stand out. Tough bodies, strong limbs, intense gazes and sharp minds, especially for German standards. They're smart cookies who know how to pick their leaders and then actually listen to them. They're good at staying in line, recognizing the right time for a strike, or knowing when to hold back. They can plan out their day, set up defenses for the night, and understand that luck isn't as reliable as good old courage. And here's a rare gem, much like us Romans. They place more trust in their leader than their troops. Their power lies in their infantry who, along with their weapons, also lug around digging tools and food supplies. While you might see other tribes rushing off into battle, the Chatti are in for the long haul. They don't often go for quick charges or skirmishes, which are more of a cavalry's thing with their fast victories and speedy retreats. Going too fast can look like you're scared, while taking your time gives off a vibe of solid courage. They have a tradition which occasionally pops up among other German tribes, but it's more of a show of individual bravery there, whereas for the Chatti it's the norm. Once they hit manhood, they let their hair and beard grow wild like they're wearing a mask of bravery. They keep this look until they've taken down an enemy. Standing over the fallen body, they reveal their faces again and announce that they've earned their place in the world, proven their worth to their homeland and parents. If you're a coward who won't fight, you stay hairy. The bravest of them also wear an iron ring, a sign of servitude which is a big deal in their culture until they redeem themselves by killing someone. But a lot of the Chatti dig this look, and you can even spot old dudes sporting it, a sight for enemies and locals alike. These guys kick off every battle, always in the front line with their fierce looks. not letting up even in peace times. They don't have homes, land, or jobs. They just pick a host, mooch off them since they think owning stuff is below them, until old age finally drains them of their warrior spirit. Right next door to the Chatti, we find the Usipai and the Tencteri hanging out along the Rhine. By this point, the Rhine has shaped up into a proper river that makes for a nice natural border. The Tencteri have got a thing for horsemanship. Just like the Chatti infantry has got a reputation, the Tencteri are known for their horsemen. This love for riding goes way back, started by their forefathers and carried on today. Kids play at riding, adults compete in it, and the old folks refuse to quit. Horses are considered such a big deal that they're passed on from father to son, just like the slaves, property, and inheritance rights. But the lucky son isn't always the eldest. It's the one who shows the most promise as a soldier. Once upon a time, the Bructeri used to live next to the Tencteri, but nowadays their spot's taken by the Kamavi and Angrivarii. The Bructeri got their butts handed to them and were almost wiped out by a bunch of neighbouring tribes teaming up against them. Could be that they were too bossy and folks got fed up, or maybe their neighbours just wanted to snatch their stuff. Who knows? But hey, the gods were in a giving mood and even let us watch the show. Over 60,000 of them got killed, not by our hands, mind you, but it was quite the sight. Here's to hoping that foreign nations continue, if not loving us, then at least hating each other. Our empire's on a roll, and there's no better gift from Lady Luck than our enemies being at each other's throats. The Angrivaria and Kamavi share their borders with tribes like the Dolgubni, Chaswari, and a few others who don't really stand out. On the northwest, we've got the Frisi, split into two, the Greater and the Lesser Frisi. They're all along the Rhine right down to the ocean, and their territory also wraps around some huge lagoons. We've had our Roman fleets navigate these waters and even dared to venture into the Northern Ocean itself. There's this rumour that Hercules' pillars are somewhere up there. Maybe Hercules actually went there, or we just like to attribute anything extraordinary to his name. Drusus Germanicus wasn't short of explorers' courage, but the ocean had other plans, keeping its secrets, and maybe Hercules too, to itself. Since then, no one's tried. It's felt more respectful to believe in the legendary deeds of the gods, rather than digging up the truth. That's as far west as Germany goes, as far as we know. It curves up towards the north, and that's where you'll find the Chauci. They start where the Frisi end, taking up a chunk of the coast, but they also spread out along the sides of all those nations I've just talked about, curving back to meet the Chatti. This big old stretch of land isn't just occupied by the Chauci, it's brimming with them. These guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to German tribes, always choosing to do things right and fair. No greed, no wild ambition, just living peacefully, never starting wars or raiding their neighbours. But don't be fooled, every man there is armed and ready, and they have a massive backup of men and horses if things get hairy. They're a perfect example of might coupled with peace, just as respected in times of war as in times of peace. Alongside the Chauci and the Chatti, the Cherushi are just chilling, untouched by attacks and bathing in a peace so long it started to get a bit boring, if not downright dangerous. In a neighbourhood where might makes right, playing nice can look suspiciously like weakness. So what was once a tribe known for being good, honest folk is now labelled as a bunch of lazy layabouts, while the Chatti's victories are hailed as strategic brilliance. Unfortunately, when the Cherushi went downhill, their buddies the Fosi got dragged down with them. They were happy to ride the Cherushi's coattails during the good times, but they sure got an equal taste of the bad. Still hanging out in this corner of Germany and close to the open sea are the Cimbri. Now, these guys are a bit of a blast from the past. They might be small fries now, but they were a big deal back in the day. You can still see signs of their past glory, big old campsites on both sides of the Rhine that hint at the sheer size and power they once boasted. I mean, you just need to see these camps to believe the stories of their massive migration. Fast forward to Rome in its 640th year. We're talking around the time of Caecilius Metellus and Papirius Carbo's consulship. And that's when we first got the heebie-jeebies about the Cimbri. Counting from then up to Emperor Trajan's second consulship, we've been trying to get a grip on Germany for about 210 years. It's been a long, tough slog, with plenty of lessons learned. Not the Samnites, nor the Carthaginians, not even the Spaniards, Gauls, or Parthians have given us such a schooling. The Germans make the East look like a walk in the park. And speaking of the East, what's their big claim to fame? Killing Crassus. They lost their own prince, Pacorus, soon after, and grovelled at Ventidius's feet. Meanwhile, the Germans have handed us defeat after defeat. They beat up Carbo, Cassius, Aurelius Scaurus, Servilius Caepio, and Malleus Maximus, and made off with 5 of our consular armies. They even snatched Varus and his 3 legions from under Augustus's nose. It's not like we haven't had our victories too. Marius gave them a taste of defeat in Italy. Caesar did his thing in Gaul, and Drusus, Tiberius, and Germanicus roughed them up on their home turf. But boy, did we pay through the nose for those wins. Let's shift gears and chat about the Suebi now. These guys aren't a single entity like the Chatti or the Tencteri. They're a big bunch, taking up over half of Germany, and divided into a bunch of tribes with different names, but they're all broadly called Suebi. The Suebi have this thing about hair. They comb it to the side and tie it up in a knot. It's like a club membership badge that sets them apart from other Germans and makes it easy to spot who's a free man and who's not among them. You'll see a few folks from other tribes rocking the same hairdo, either because they're related to the Suebi or just because people love to copy each other. But usually they drop the look as they get older, while the Suebi keep it going right into their silver years. It's not some fancy hairstyle to woo women or anything. The real reason they do it? They want to look taller and scarier when they're about to battle it out with their enemies. The Semnones, a subset of the Suebi, are the old-timers of the group, and they've got a whole host of ancient customs to prove it. They've got this eerie ritual where all the Suebi tribes come together in a holy grove that their ancestors have vouched for. The get-together kicks off with a human sacrifice. Yeah, you read that right. Setting the tone for the rest of the uncanny shindig. And you're not even allowed to enter the grove unless you're all tied up with a cord, basically admitting that you're nothing compared to the big G. That's God, not gangster. Trip and fall down? No, you can't just get up. You've got to roll your way out. This grove is a big deal to them. They consider it the birthplace of their tribe and the god's crib. The Semnones enjoy some serious street cred because of their wealth. They've got 100 districts under their belt, and their sheer number makes them feel like the head honchos of the Suebi crew. Then there are the Langobardi, who've made a name for themselves by being the underdogs. Despite being surrounded by larger tribes, they've managed to hold their own, not through surrendering, but by facing the music and duking it out. After them come the Reudigni, Aviones, Angli, Varini, Eudoces, Suarines, and Nuitones, all nestled safely behind rivers and woods. None of these guys are particularly standouts on their own, but they've got a shared love for Nerthus, or Mother Earth. They think she likes to hop onto a chariot and take a spin among her peeps. There's a sacred grove on an island where her cloth-covered chariot is kept, and only the priest gets to touch it. When she's around, there's a huge party in every town she visits. No one fights, no one picks up weapons. Even all the metal stuff is put away. It's a chill time until she's had enough and the priest escorts her back home. Afterwards, they clean the chariot, the priest's clothes, and if you believe it, even the goddess herself in a secluded lake. This clean-up duty is carried out by slaves who are then promptly drowned in the lake. The whole thing is so spooky and mysterious that it gives people the chills, and they're too scared to ask what's going on. The slice of Suebi territory I've described extends into the lesser-known parts of Germany. Closer to us, along the Danube, like we previously followed the Rhine, are the Hermunduri. These folks are so tight with us that they're the only Germans allowed to trade, not just on the riverbanks, but way within our borders, even in the swanky capital of Raetia. They can wander wherever they want without a guard tailing them. While other Germans only get to gawk at our armed camps, the Hermunduri get to ogle our fancy villas and estates without being green with envy. They also got the source of the Elbe River in their backyard, a river that was quite the talk of the town back in the day, but now is just a name. After the Hermunduri, you have the Naristi, and then the Marcomanni and the Quadi. The Marcomanni are quite the big shots. They're even living on the land they won from the Boii through sheer guts. The Naristi and Quadi, they're not half bad either. These tribes are the face of the Danube-girdle Germany for us. Until recently, the Marcomanni and Quadi had their own homegrown kings, from the noble lines of Maroboduus and Tudrus. Nowadays, though, they sometimes get foreign rulers. Rome has a say in who becomes king and often provides them with military or financial aid. Not going to lie, sometimes throwing money at the problem does solve it. Close on the heels of the Marcomanni and Quadi, we've got the Marsigni, Cotini, Ossi, and Buri. The Marsigni and Buri, they're like the Suebi twins with the same language and lifestyle. Now, the Cotini and Ossi, they're not Germans. That's pretty clear from their Celtic and Pannonian tongues, plus the fact they pay tribute. Yup, they actually shell out dough, which kind of labels them as outsiders. The Quadi and Sarmatians are the ones raking in this loot. The Cotini have the added embarrassment of working in iron mines. Their digs are mostly in mountainous and highland regions without too many flatlands. Suabia's got this massive mountain range running smack dab in the middle, and on the other side you've got a truckload of tribes, with the Lugi spread out the most and split into smaller factions. The top dogs among them include the Harii, Helvecones, Manirni, Helicii, and Naharvali. The Naharvali take pride in this sacred grove they've got. Tied to some old-school worship, their head honcho priest likes to dress in drag, but the gods they're all about are like our Castor and Pollux. That's the vibe, at least, even though they call them the Alci. No idols or anything foreign about this faith. They're just worshipped as young bros. The Hari eat, well, they're the tough guys on this block, and they add a dash of guile to their brutality. They're all about the goth aesthetic, blacking their shields and body painting themselves, and they love to pick the darkest nights for their skirmishes. The sight of this spooky, shadowy army scares the living daylights out of their enemies. 'Cause let's face it, who wouldn't freak out at this otherworldly, terrifying spectacle? Losing a battle always starts with freaking out your eyes. Past the Lugi, you hit the Gothones, who live under the rule of kings. It's a bit more heavy-handed than in other German states, but not so much that they're gagged and bound. Right next to the sea, you've got the Rugi and Lemovi. All these groups like their round shields and short swords, and they're cool with being under a king's thumb. Next up, you've got the Suiones, who've decided to make their home smack dab in the ocean. They're packing some serious heat, not just with weapons and warriors, but they've got quite a fleet to boot. Their ships have a bit of a twist to them. They've got a prow on both ends, so no matter which way the wind blows, they're always ready to hit the beach. You won't see sails on these bad boys, nor do they stick a bunch of oars on the sides. Instead, their rowlocks are mobile, just like the ones on riverboats, so they can change the rowing direction as needed. Now, these folks also appreciate the good life. They've got a single ruler running the show, wielding absolute power and unquestionable authority. Unlike other places in Germany where anyone can get their hands on weapons, the Suiones have a stricter policy. They've got a keeper for the weapons, and surprise, surprise, he's a slave. This ain't arbitrary. There are a couple of reasons for this. First, their sea-locked position means surprise invasions aren't really a thing. And second, if you've got a bunch of folks just loafing around with weapons, things can go south real quick. And why is it a slave in charge of the weapons, not some noble freeman or even a freed slave? That's part of the king's game plan. Now, if you head north from the Suiones, you hit another sea. This one's a bit more laid back, practically stagnant. This is the sea folks reckon is the outermost edge of the world, because the sun's last rays hang around here until dawn, outshining the stars. There's even this yarn that says, you can hear the sun coming up from the waves and catch a glimpse of his horses and his shiny crown. Basically, this is as far as the world goes, if you believe what folks say. Now, swing a right at the Swabian Sea, and you've got the Esti. They're kind of like the Swabi in terms of customs and stuff, but their lingo is closer to British. They're all about worshipping the mother of the gods and wear this wild boar symbol for protection, sort of like their own personal bodyguard. They're not big on iron weapons, preferring to club things instead. But unlike their fellow Germans, who can be pretty lazy, they're hard-working, farming grain and other crops. They're also into diving for amber, or glisum, as they call it, in shallow waters, or just picking it up off the beach. For a long time, it was just another piece of ocean garbage until the Romans decided it was the height of luxury. And the funny thing is, the Aesti couldn't care less about it themselves. They just collect it, sell it as is, and are pretty shocked at the price it gets. Just beyond the Suiones, you'll find the Cetones. They're pretty much a carbon copy of the Suiones, except for one thing. The ladies are in charge here. Honestly, it's a sign of how far they've fallen. I wouldn't even call it below freedom. It's just downright bad slavery. All right, here we have the edge of Swabia. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the Puccini, Venedi, and Feni folks should be classed with the Germans or the Sarmatians. But listen, the Puccini, also sometimes called Bastani, are pretty much German-like. They speak the same lingo, have the same way of life, and they settle down in the same way. What catches the eye, though, is their love of filth, and their high and mighty are just plain lazy. But with a lot of intermarrying going on, they're starting to look a bit Sarmatian. Ain't the prettiest picture, to tell you the truth. Now, the Venedi have taken on a lot of Sarmatian customs, which kind of makes sense given their wanderlust that takes them through all the woods and mountains between the Puccini and the Feni. But overall, they're still pretty German, because they've got settled homes, they carry shields, and they like to get about on foot, which is definitely not how the Sarmatians roll. They're all about wagons and horse riding. And then we've got the Feni, who are shockingly savage and disgustingly poor. No proper weapons, no horses, no homes. Their diet consists of wild plants. They wear animal skins and sleep right there on the ground. They use bone-tipped arrows for hunting because they lack iron. Their women join them in hunting and insist on a fair share of the game. Their babies, they cover them with woven branches to shield them from wild animals and weather. That's the extent of their baby-proofing. And the funny thing is, they reckon they've got it better than the rest of us, sweating over farming and building, worrying about profit and loss. They've reached a level of contentment that not many of us can claim. They don't even feel the need to pray for anything. Now, after the Feni, we're getting into the realm of myths and legends, with these so-called Helusii and Oxiones that supposedly have the faces of humans but the bodies of animals. As for these tall tales, I'll keep my opinions to myself. I mean, who can confirm or deny such things?